This is the Technology Supported Collaboration Mini Course Lecture 9, Project and Relationship Management. I'm here with Gary Olson, where we're going to talk about, well, let's just start with, what exactly are project and relationship management?
Well, if you have a project, you got to figure out how you're going to manage it, how it's going to work. And as people have learned in organizations, that you need to really make these things be explicit. And so project management has become a real state of the art. And in fact, I think you can actually get credentialed by having taken a certain number of project management courses, and you get some kind of certificate that you are now a credentialed project management type person. We teach it, we have in our undergraduate informatics major at Irvine, they have a year-long capstone course where they do build a software project for a real client. The prerequisite, one of the required prerequisites for this course is a quarter-long project management course, where they really learn the technical details of how to do project management. It has to do with, working out your plan in detail, down to the kinds of things that can get done in a reasonable chunk of time, so you can actually track it. Because then you want to know where you are, where are you in your project, so you build a tracking mechanism into this. Plan revisions. Oops, you discover something partway through that your original plan is not going to work. You're going to fix the plan, now you have to explicitly fix it. How are you going to allocate responsibilities? Who's going to do what? And what resources do they need, including time? If this piece of the project is going to take a month, then that person better have a month to do that project in. Who's going to get assigned it? If they need some special resources, some software or other kinds of resources, make sure they've got what they need to get it done. And then there really is a formal technology for doing all of this.
So we've seen that technology. There's people who bring out these elaborate PERT charts and identifying the critical path, the path in a project where if anything slips, things will go behind. But that really doesn't tell the whole story, because we also care about managing the people, the relationships. What goes into relationship management?
Well, we've talked about a lot of these things, the kind of things that go into the communication covenant and so on. Just, how are you going to manage the interactions among the people, and how are you going to manage surprises in those interactions? And there will be surprises. You're talking about working on a project over a 3-year period. There are going to be things you didn't think about that come up. And you got to make sure that the people's feelings about those things are managed. I'm going to have disappointments. Well, how are you going to feel about my disappointments? Are you going to be angry with me, or are you going to be supportive? Just, those kinds of details, they're really important, because, teams can go off the rails really quickly if you're not in sync on those kinds of things. And you're going to face these. You just inevitably are going to face these kinds of things.
I know there's certain, just sort of global problems when we're dealing with remote collaborations that come up when people are trying to manage them. Why don't you take us through a couple of those, and then we'll come back to the smaller scale projects that we're talking about in IRL.
Yeah, and these may be things that may not be quite so critical in your kind of project, but I just want to kind of call these to your attention. One is culture, and these can be organizational culture, national culture, all kinds of. Culture is a very complicated concept, but a lot of us come from some kind of culture, either in our profession. What are you trained in? What's the profession you identify with? That's a kind of culture. What region are you from? You're from the Midwest, the West Coast, overseas, so on. And we have seen in multinational projects, I'm thinking about national culture right now, just all kinds of misunderstandings. Because how people think about things like communication differ a lot. How people think about making decisions differ a lot across culture. The good news is that there's a lot of awareness of these kinds of things. There's this interesting book series called Culture Shock, written by somebody who knows another culture but is not from that culture and writes about it. The one that we found the most interesting was foreigners writing about U.S. culture. What do they think about us? One way that large companies have handled this is is what they call job rotation. So we followed a project in Ford Motor Company that was between Germany, France, and U.S. And what they made sure was that each site had at least one person from the other culture. And so if I worked in Dearborn, Michigan, I might spend 6 months in France or 6 months in Germany. And the idea is that those people can act as translators. So if something unusual and unexpected happens, I can say, oh, what you don't know is that, in the U.S. such and such season, we do such and such. I remember one concrete example was in the Ford Motor Company in France, they worked 35-hour weeks. They didn't work Friday afternoons. And yet, occasionally, the people in Dearborn would schedule a meeting that was on Friday afternoon in France. Well, people got very upset about that until they put a French person in Dearborn who could explain that you don't understand how our work week works. So there are ways of kind of dealing with these kinds of issues.
Yeah, no, that seemed like critical issues. I know one of the things I had a discussion with somebody in India about was the fact that the role of status
Yeah.
is very different. And in fact, even within the U.S.,
Yeah.
the idea of whether challenging somebody is a positive, bold thing that shows confidence and initiative or is just being rude
Yeah, exactly.
varies depending on the culture of your institution and even the subpart of your institution.
Well, and therefore, a lot of things that we Americans sort of take for granted are viewed as rude by people from elsewhere.
Yes, like, we're sitting there wondering why the waiter is so rude as to not bring the check. And they're wondering why all these other people are rudely trying to usher folks out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to learn there. Another one is dealing with just the whole issue of time.
Time zones in particular, yeah. It's working where there's like a 1 hour time difference is sort of manageable. If you start getting 3, 4, 5 or more time zone differences, there are really some serious issues. And we've seen, international collaborations involving like 12-hour differences, complete reversals of night and day. You get some real difficult coordination issues. And we saw a project involving, again, one of the auto companies. People in India refused to work anything other than their standard hours. And the people in Dearborn, by union rules, couldn't work anything other than their standard hours. Boy, did that cause trouble. Now, there's on the technical side, there's a lot more interest now in what kind of asynchronous tools could help with some of these issues. If we're not going to have time to have even a video conference, the ways we can sort of share rich information. So asynchronous video, for example. I at the end of the day, I make a little 5-minute video about what I did today, and then you, in your time zone, can open it up in the morning and say, "Oh, I see where he is." Complicated issues. In the software world, there's been this fantasy that we could have round-the-world software development. Successive 8-hour shifts could do software development, and most of the evidence has shown that doesn't work. It's just really complicated to make that kind of thing work.
This is also just a critical issue when you do come up with it in something like a communication covenant.
Yeah.
I'm on a number of committees and boards that have people on multiple continents. And most of them have an expectation that we're going to meet at a headquarters time.
Yeah.
But for some of these groups, we've made conscious decisions that we're going to rotate our times to be during the normal time of each of the people who are on it, so that everybody has the inconvenience of having to do a late night or early morning meeting periodically. And so there are a number of different ways to do that.
And I can say that I'm very involved in a project at MIT, and just the 3-hour time difference between California and Massachusetts is a big enough challenge that we have to really put some conscious effort into scheduling, being sympathetic about email responses, all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. So as we think about this right in IRL, I mean, project management may not need particularly fancy tools. Obviously, if you have project management experience and you want to use project management tools, that's great. But we're giving you access to Google Sheets, which is a shared spreadsheet system, and you can put together a spreadsheet of tasks, who they're assigned to, the deadlines, the status. All of that can be done without a lot of sophisticated tools, but it can't be ignored.
Right.
And so you do need to think about planning and monitoring. And we're going to provide a little bit more detail on project management as you move from proposal writing to the execution stage, as we think it's going to be useful for you in being successful in moving forward with your projects. Relationship management is also going to be critical in IRL, and frankly, it's critical for us as the leaders of the program as well, because this isn't a research this isn't a research project or program. It's not about getting it done. It would be a hideously inefficient way for us to get a small project done. It's about developing you as a cadre of leaders. And from our perspective, that means we want you to have good experiences and build up collaborations both within and across your teams that enable you to go out and have people you have trust in and can work with going forward. But it also means within your own teams. It's not enough to say, hey, when we were done, we published the results and we'll never work with each other again. You need to be checking in regularly, make sure your teammates feel invested, feel they have their ownership, that they feel valued as we go forward.
Well, and this is all going to be part of what you end up getting out of this whole experience, right? I mean, at the end, you'd like to have a really satisfying experience being part of this program, and this is going to be one of the key things that makes it be a satisfying experience.
So with that, we're going to wrap up our discussion of project management and relationship management. Next is going to be the final lecture of this course, as you are given instructions to write your own plan and a few words of conclusion. This has been Lecture 9, Project and Relationship Management.